Welcome, everybody, to the May meeting of Silicon Valley Clean Energy. And let's go ahead and get started with the roll call.
Thank you. Chair Tyson?
Here.
Vice Chair Klein?
Here.
Director Fruin?
Here.
Scozola?
Here.
Showalter?
Here.
Walia?
Here.
Lee?
Here.
Meadows?
Here.
Joining us remotely, Director Makachek?
Present.
Thank you. And currently absent, we have alternate Director Risto, Director Hilton, Director Barbalio, and Director Martinez-Beltran, but we do have a quorum of our board present.
Great. Thank you very much. Let's move on to the next item, which is public comment on matters not on the agenda. Let me first just check if we have any public comment for items not on the agenda before I read the rules. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak? I do not see any in the room. Not online. So in that case, I will dispense with that speech and move straight on to the consent calendar. And let's go ahead and see, do we have any questions or motions from directors here on the consent? I do not see any here. I'll get it. And then let's go to the public comment. Do we have any public comment on the consent? I do not see any in the room or online. In that case,
Move to approve consent.
Second.
thank you. We have a motion and a second. Let's go ahead with the roll call.
Chair Tyson?
Yes.
Vice Chair Klein?
Aye.
Director Scozola?
Aye.
Fruin?
Aye.
Meadows?
Aye.
Showalter?
Aye.
Walia?
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
Makachek?
Aye.
Thank you. That motion carries.
Great, thank you. And anybody, a member of the public watching to see, we just covered a whole bunch of really important work. And so I would just want to make sure that staff gets the credit for developing these actions, then giving us the preparatory material that allowed us to study this ahead of this meeting. With that, let's move on to the regular calendar, and we'll go on with item number 2, and that is the CEO report and informational item.
All right. Good evening, Chair and Directors. I have a few items to highlight from the CEO report this evening, starting with one of my favorite things to do, and I'm lucky enough to do it almost every month. It's to congratulate a promotion that happened within our staff. Sangeeta Kumar was recently promoted from data engineer to senior data engineer. She's taken on much more responsibilities and is just an amazing analyst and data scientist on our team, and we're all excited to have her continue to grow and stay with SVCE. Before I go on to highlight some other items, I thought it would make sense for me to invite our Director of Legislative and Government Affairs, Benna Chang, to speak to you about some of the things that we've been learning with respect to the federal budget reconciliation package and the state budget. So with that, I'll turn it over to Benna for her to update.
Thank you, Monica. Good evening, board. So we've had a really busy week on the federal and state side this week and wanted to give you a quick update. So as you may have heard, the U.S. House of Representatives policy committees have started releasing portions of bill language for the budget reconciliation bill. The bills contain a lot of sweeping policies for a variety of areas, including tax policy and healthcare. But we have been very closely watching the energy and climate impacts in these bills. And there are a couple to highlight for you. There are proposals that, for example, end tax credits for EVs, heat pumps, and residential solar and storage early. So they'll end at the end of this year instead of in 2032. There's proposals to accelerate the sunset date and make it much harder to access investment and production tax credits for utility scale renewables. And then there's also proposals to rescind unobligated funding from a wide range of energy and climate programs. We are very deeply analyzing the impacts of these changes both to SVCE and to our customers. We'll be working with our coalitions on advocacy, and we'll keep the board updated on progress with the federal stuff, the side. On the state side, this morning, as you might have seen, the governor released his May revise of the state budget proposal. The governor is now projecting a $16 billion deficit, which is a really sharp difference from the modest $300 million budget surplus he projected in January. The key driver for this deficit is tariffs and the corresponding drop in the stock market, as well as economic uncertainty. All that being said, the energy and climate programs did relatively well in this latest budget proposal, even despite the significant budget deficit. The governor did make some announcements on cap and trade today. He is proposing to rebrand the program to Cap and Invest, extend the program to 2045, redirect some funding to CAL FIRE, and then he also wants to guarantee $1 billion a year to go to high-speed rail. Again, we will be monitoring the state budget and working with our coalitions on advocacy. Happy to answer any questions.
Director Lee?
Hi, Bina. On the estimation being based on the tariff, as the Chinese U.S. tariff has dropped so significantly since Monday, did the governor's budget account for that change, or is it based on information prior to that change?
It's not clear to me what exactly went into the projections, so I'll take that as a research question. I know that the governor did mention in his press conference today that the amount of uncertainty right now is really unprecedented. But the state budget is driven a lot by how the stock market is doing. So he's projecting for example, $10 billion deficit just from capital gains losses for the state. So, I think it's a very uncertain time and things can move very quickly at the state level.
Thank you, Bina. That's all I have.
Vice Chair Klein.
Thank you. The cap and invest kind of target, can you give us more details as those become available? I hadn't heard. I knew that they were looking at what was going to be happening with cap and trade. But if you can forward any articles or any better definition to the board, that would be useful.
Yes, happy to.
Thank you.
That's it. That's it.
Okay, so a couple other items to highlight. One, we would like to invite you all, and I think we've already done so, but in case you didn't put it on your calendar, we are hosting, along with Peninsula Clean Energy, a 2025 Building Codes event titled Maintaining Momentum in Uncertain Times. This is going to be held on May 29th from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Ainswell Hotel in Mountain View. We have a guest speaker attending from the California Energy Commission, Commissioner McAllister, and so far we've received quite a bit of interest in RSVPs in this event, so we think it's going to be a very good and timely event, and we hope you can all join us. And then I know that I'm a little bit out of order, Andrea, but I wanted to also just kind of recap our special meeting that we had earlier this evening at our new office space or our headquarters. Again, many of you attended, and thank you so much for your attendance and your participation in that special meeting. The plan now is to essentially, we're in the process of collecting input from board members and community members. We'll consolidate that input that we've received so far, send it to the executive committee at the May meeting, and then incorporate it into our design when we work with the architect and the designer to help design a new space for SVCE. So basically, we're on track. This is going to be a process, and we hope to have something in front of the board in June or August with a proposal on the project. And then next, we wanted to highlight some events that we participated in April, and we have a couple of pictures to share as well. So starting with the Hanford ribbon cutting event, thank you to Chair Tyson, Vice Chair Klein, Director Walea, and Director Scazola for joining us in this important ribbon cutting event. We also have a video to showcase the event, and we'll send that out tomorrow. It's a little bit too long for today, but this is a picture of us. You'll notice that Chair Tyson is standing next to, with the big scissors in his hand, is standing next to Congressman Valadeo, who also joined at the ribbon cutting and had some nice words in support of this project. So this is an important project for us, if you recall, because it helps meet some of our midterm reliability procurement requirements, help us meet our resource adequacy needs, and also because we've added a clean battery to this location, this is the natural gas peaker plant, helps us reduce the emissions over time at this location. So thank you all for participating. Next slide. Oh, same picture, there's all of us again. Next slide. Many of us also were able to attend CalCCA's, that's the California Community Choice Association's annual conference down in Irvine, California. Thank you again to Chair Tyson, Vice Chair Klein, Director Walea, and Director Scazola for accompanying staff to this event. Staff was well represented for SVCE, partly because this is an important conference for us to attend. I would love to have everybody go there, but unfortunately that's not feasible. But it's an important conference because we do a lot of work across the state with the different CCAs in many different areas: regulatory advocacy, legislative advocacy, procurement, programs, customer service, marketing, communication, outreach, HR, administrative services, and governance. So we really do collaborate with all the CCAs across the state. So this is an opportunity for them to get together and showcase what we do. We were actually on 6 different panels, and so we were very prominent at the conference this year. It was the largest conference they've had. By the way, I think they had 900 people, making it one of the largest energy conference in the state. So hopefully you can all join us next year. And then next, I'm inviting Pamela Leonard to approach. She's going to share some Earth Day pictures that we took while we were out in your community.
I'll go over here. Hello. Okay, there we go. All right. So we've survived Earth Month, and it was a blast. This was, speaking of a really big conference, we had, I'm really excited to share 1,000 people toured our dream home at, it wasn't at all 12 of the events that we did, but we can just scroll and appreciate some of these Earth Day photos, and you can see, thank you to the directors who stopped by and said hi at our booth. So yeah, 1,000 conversations about heat pumps. I'd never thought in my dreams that day would happen, and it did. But overall, about 2,000 engagements with people in our community to talk about rebates and learn about our offers and services. Some common themes, of course, on trend with what we've expected, concerns about energy bills and a lot of questions about solar, which is very typical. So just really want to thank all of your communities for hosting these events that give us the opportunity to come out and engage with our customers and talk about what we do. So thank you. Oh, and one thing I want to mention really quick, because the events with Earth Month are not quite over. This Sunday in Campbell, we're going to be at the Campbell Boogie Festival. Director Scazola is going to be a judge. It's our annual student scholarship competition. We have 5 live student performances singing their songs they've written about clean energy and heat pumps and all that fun stuff to perform for the best performance. So if you're available, we're going to follow up with an email to let you know which of your communities are represented, because there's just about half or so. So we'll be doing that on Sunday in Campbell at 10 a.m. So more details will be emailed.
Great, thank you, Pam. That concludes my CEO report, unless there are any questions.
Great. Well, let's see if we do. And you know, as big as that report that Pamela just gave was, it didn't include everything, because I went to the Los Altos one. Was that last week or so? And toured through
It was the same than with
Oh, it
the
was
3 of
me,
us.
yeah.
So 2
was
weeks
me.
ago,
It was
almost
it was
2
the
weeks
4th,
ago,
yeah.
Living Electric. So SVCE had a table booth, and the little house
It was there.
was there. But there was no bed. Where do people sleep? But that's a different question. Anyway. Okay.
There was no bathroom either. Yeah, sometimes you need that more often than. Yeah. Hang on, let me just finish it. So let me just add that I just want to echo what Monica said about the CCA event. I found it hugely, this is my 3rd year in a row, and I really enjoyed it. I was so impressed with the staff being in so many different places at once. It was also just a wonderful opportunity to meet our counterparts, especially elected officials. Lunch was a real highlight for me, and talk about how our CCAs are running and all that. And I got one, not a buzzword, a tagline, something that I really liked. It stuck with me, and I want to share it with you. And that is, you know, how do you describe what a CCA is? And they described it as, we are your friendly neighborhood service provider, and we're a bare-knuckle commodities trader. And, you know, it's true. It's both of those things. We've got the forward look to the population to have things like this electric home, and then also we're back there in the trenches negotiating tough deals And thanks to all the staff who does all those things. Did you want to speak, Director Walia?
Thank you, Chair Tyson. Yes, the Cal CCA conference was fabulous. Staff who presented at so many panels was great. I'm also going to thank Pamela's team for Earth Month coming to Saratoga Elementary School. We didn't have the dream home, but we had the dream kids in the elementary school who are so smart that they give the answers for all the questions. So again, thanks to your full team for coming there. It was a great opportunity for me to be there again. Thanks.
Great. I don't see any other questions or comments. So with that, do we have any public comment on the CEO's report? I do not see any in the room.
None online, Chair.
Oh, very good. Well, thank you. That was quite interesting, and what a month. Let's move on to item number 3, authorizing the CEO to execute 2 10-year power purchase agreements with SunZia Winds, both south and north.
All right. Is that on now?
Yep.
All right. Good evening. I am happy to be here to request that you authorize our CEO to execute 2 agreements with SunZia Wind South and SunZia Wind North for the procurement of renewable wind energy in substantial form and any necessary ancillary agreements that may follow. These are 2 agreements for LLCs at the same project site, which is SunZia Wind in New Mexico. They total 25 megawatts, so 17.25 megawatts at SunZia Wind South, 7.75 at SunZia Wind North. Both would be 10-year PPAs with an expected online date of June 1st, 2026. Total amount not to exceed between the 2 of them, $84 million. As you may know, we have 22 long-term PPAs that we have executed to date. 9 of those are online now, totaling 625 megawatts of capacity, clean energy, long-term capacity online, and a total of over 1,600 executed that will eventually be coming online. We're currently projecting 75% RPS in 2030. This procurement of SunZia arose from an RFO that we launched last summer, seeking diverse RPS and midterm reliability resources. So overall, the goals of this procurement were RPS, renewable portfolio standard resources, resources that could help us meet our integrated resource plan, looking for low greenhouse gas emission resources, meeting the state's midterm reliability procurement order, also seeking portfolio diversity, both in technology and geography. I'll flag that because this is a wind contract or wind contracts, it really helps in the portfolio diversity area because we have a lot of solar right now. Of course, solar is strongest midday. Wind blows at night. It also blows in the winter much more so than solar does. So it's a really good complement to our existing portfolio. We were also seeking resource adequacy and carbon-free energy and standalone storage projects. So these SunZia contracts arose from that RFO. A little bit about SunZia Wind. The name might sound familiar to you because we have an existing 100-megawatt contract with them. It's a huge wind park in New Mexico. It's over 3,500 megawatts total, and it has several off-takers. As I noted, we are already one of them, and so we have 100 megawatts, and we're proposing the 25 additional megawatts across these 2 agreements. They are 2 agreements, just again, sort of located at the same site. And I'll note that our existing agreement has language in it allowing it to bifurcate into the 2 separate LLCs, which is what's already reflected here. So a little more about SunZia Wind South and North. The parent company is Pattern Energy. Again, it's a total of 25 megawatts, which would be about 80 gigawatt hours per year. of PCC1, Portfolio Content Category 1, Renewable Energy, which is kind of counts the most under RPS rules. And it would count towards our midterm reliability requirements, which have funny counting rules. It would provide probably just under 9 megawatts towards that. And it also provides resource adequacy. It's in New Mexico, in Torrance, Lincoln, and San Miguel counties. Again, this is a really huge site. And again, a 10-year contract online in mid-2026. This will help our annual RPS progress starting in 2026. It meets about 2% of our load, which means it adds about 2% of RPS. And that helps with our SB 100 target, which would require 60% by 2030, 90% by 2035. There's also SB 350, which says that at least 65% of our RPS requirement has to come from long-term contracts, defining long-term as at least 10 years. So this would contribute towards that. We are well ahead of those goals, but this just puts us in an even better position by bringing our long-term RPS up to about 74% in compliance period 6 in 2028 to 2030. The contract, as I noted, will also provide resource adequacy. So you can see here it provides clean energy as well as clean resource adequacy. Our portfolio is continually getting more clean energy contributing to resource adequacy. So this would, similar to its contribution to energy, would provide about 2% towards our clean resource adequacy portfolio. In summary, SunZia Wind South and SunZia Wind North would diversify our portfolio while meeting our clean objectives, contributing an annual 2% of RPS eligible energy, helping meet our clean energy goals, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, meeting resource adequacy goals, and midterm reliability requirement. It provides geographic and technology-based diversity and a net positive portfolio value. So again, the request is to authorize the CEO to execute these two agreements.
Great, thank you. Let's see if we have any questions. Director Lee?
It sounds like a fairly straightforward, no-brainer on this one. So far we've had good experience with SunZia for the past year and a half since we've been working with them, correct?
Correct. I will note, so our existing contract is not yet online, but it is under construction. And so everything so far is going smoothly. And so it's a bit low risk from that perspective.
Great, thank you.
Director Walia?
Thank you. So adding to that, this is straightforward, as has been said by Director Lee, because we are adding to somebody that we are already partnering with. And the good news is they are going to, the rest of this that is on the agenda tonight, the 25 megawatts, is going to come online in a year from now, essentially, June of 2026, which is great, and with a 10-year reliability. The question in my mind is, it struck me that our current solar plus storage is 22%, geothermal 11%, and wind 8%. So as we are diversifying from a price perspective, without getting into any details, does it make sense for us to look to including more of wind to add a greater percentage there as we move in that direction, or is this a good mix?
That's a really good question. I would say all prices being equal, it would be great to add more wind. I don't know, Monica, if you have thoughts, but I think we're definitely looking for a mix.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's not a lot of new wind development in California. And as Britta mentioned, one of our main objectives right now is to meet our midterm reliability procurement orders, which requires it to be new build capacity. We have several other, as you noted, wind projects in our portfolio. Every time we go out for an RFP, we certainly are technology agnostic, and we'll evaluate projects based on their performance or expected performance. And wind is one that we always want to see in there, but we just aren't seeing a lot. And now with the federal administration executive orders basically putting a ban on developing new wind projects on BLM or Bureau of Land Management land, that's a problem because a lot of wind out of California gets built on BLM land. And then with some of these proposals that Benna talked about for the Inflation Reduction Act, it really takes a sledgehammer to wind resources too. So we think it's going to be harder to find wind projects and even out of state as well. And so, but yes, it's definitely something that we try to pursue, whether it's through RFPs or through bilateral negotiations. We're working with CC Power to see if we can get some larger projects interested in us. But right now, it's just it's a valuable resource.
So it's going to be a more limited resource in terms of percentage of what's available out there.
Yes.
As things are changing at the federal level. So what would be the other resource that may not be impacted? I know everything is changing literally by the minute, but what would be the other option for us to diversify?
So geothermal is another resource that we try to pursue quite often, but it's also a scarce resource and has a long lead time for development. It's not it's not an easy resource to build in California or any part of the country. It takes many years to develop. Offshore wind is one that the state is very interested in developing. It has its own kind of long lead time, plus other financing and costs associated with it. But it's one that the state is, I think, going to push the central procurement entity, which is that entity that they created to buy these types of resources that are hard for LSCs like us to procure. So they're looking at offshore wind, they're looking at new geothermal technologies. But outside of that, I mean, if it doesn't come through our RFP, then it probably isn't a viable resource yet. And so that's what we use the basis for our procurement.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks, Britt.
Great. Let's go to online and Director Mekachuk. Oh.
Hi.
I come to you.
If I was hearing Monica correctly, I think she's saying that this is expensive. Can you talk a little bit about the cost of this relative to the cost of our portfolio in general terms?
Yeah, I think generally wind tends to be more expensive than solar, but it also generates in hours where we might be getting better market prices. So I think our valuation showed this being valuable for our portfolio based on when it is generating.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Let's go to Director Showalter.
Yeah, this looks like a fabulous power generation project. I just noticed, of course, that there's no batteries associated with this. And I wondered if there's any move in this area to provide storage for some of this electricity, or if it's needed.
Yeah, that's a good question. My understanding is that batteries don't really pay off as much with wind because it already is generating in hours where it's getting better market value. Batteries kind of make money off that arbitrage of like charging when the sun is providing a lot of solar and discharging when it's not. And so that arbitrage value isn't quite there as much with wind.
Thank you. Very interesting.
It is interesting. That looks like all the questions from the, do we have any public comment? I don't see any in the room. Okay, and then we'll, Director Lee?
Motion move to approve.
Second by Klein.
Let's do a roll call.
Chair Tyson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Klein,
Aye.
Squazzola,
Aye.
Fruin,
Aye.
Meadows,
Aye.
Risto,
Aye.
Showalter,
Yes.
Walia,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Mekachuk.
Aye.
Thank you. That motion carries.
Great. Thank you for that really clear presentation, and it's a compelling thought. I just love the aspects of wind. I just wish it were cheaper and there was more of it. Although when it comes to shortage of wind, that's not always true in this chamber. Oh, I didn't mean us. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Great. Let's move on to item number 4. Adopting a resolution authorizing the CEO to execute a contract with Lunar Energy. And we have new speakers.
right, thank you, Chair, and good evening, directors. This is a big and complicated topic, and I wanted to come up with some sort of a provocative statement at the beginning of this to pique your interest. So I'm going to give this a try. At no time in the history of the California grid has there been a bigger need and a bigger opportunity to shape customer demand. And the better that we can do this, the more that we can make power reliable, clean, and affordable. Okay? So our task here tonight is to unpack that big statement. We're going to talk about the needs, the opportunities, and the goals for expanding demand flexibility in our area. And we're specifically going to ask you to authorize Monica to negotiate and execute an agreement with Lunar Energy for a DERMS platform, and we'll explain what that is, but it's really central to what our plans are for advancing demand flexibility in our service territory. We've had a big internal team working on this for about a year. I'm going to be joined here tonight by Joey Landy from our customer success team and over the airwaves by Colton Heath from our power supply team. Colton's going to start out talking about what the value of demand flexibility is. In other words, how the cost of energy varies during the day and during the year. So with that, Colton, I will turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Don. I'll try to move swiftly here as I know there's a lot of content to share with the board this evening. So we have two main value streams, or cost value streams, that SVCE can receive from having a demand flexibility program. And the first is the value of wholesale energy savings if devices shift their usage into non-peak demand hours. And so Britta was actually hinting at this earlier when she spoke to arbitrage value that batteries experience. We want to shift usage into the middle of the day where solar generation is plentiful. California has had massive solar build out in the past decade. And so this results in a very clean and cheap grid in the middle of the day. The graph you can see here on the slide shows CAISO wholesale energy prices from a mild spring day one month ago. And you can see that even on a mild weather day, there's nearly a $50 per megawatt hour spread between the 2 p.m. price and the 7 p.m. price. So as an example, an electric vehicle charging at 2 p.m. is costing $50 per megawatt hour less in the wholesale market than it would if it was charging at 7 p.m. These prices are different every single hour of every single day, but the general shape we see here is persistent throughout the year. The market calls this shape in the middle of the day the solar belly of the energy duck curve that we see. So shifting device usage into this solar belly can create savings for SVCE and for participating customers in demand flex programs. Next slide, please.
Sorry.
So shifting electricity usage out of the evening peak also has reliability benefits for the grid and for SVCE's portfolio. In California, load-serving entities must purchase what we call capacity to meet reliability obligations that are determined by the CPUC and by the California Energy Commission. Due to scarcity in that capacity market, we've seen capacity prices increasing a lot the past 5 years, exemplified in the table at the right. And the graphic here is an example of a load-serving entity's reliability obligation. The graph shows all 24 hours in a day, and the bars exemplify a resource stack. And the black line exemplifies the reliability obligation that the load serving entity must procure up to. So notice that the black line, the obligation, is highest around 5 to 7 p.m. in the evening. So in this example that we see on the slide, the utility has the resources to meet the black line in all 24 hours. However, if, say, at 7 p.m., that resource stack was not high enough and it could not meet that black line, it would face penalties from the CPUC. So demand flexibility programs look to shift or modify the shape of this black line and shift the obligation away from the peak evening hours so that a utility such as SVCE can avoid having to procure as much expensive capacity in those peak hours. And so then that can create cost savings. So I'll pass it back to Dawn for a history of demand flexibility and where it's headed in the future.
Okay, so from a historical perspective, why is demand flex so valuable now? And it's kind of interesting to look back even 15 years, say to 2010. Things were quite different. On the supply side, the grid in California was 90% plus or minus fossil fuel and nuclear fired. There weren't a lot of renewables on the grid. Capacity was predictable. If there was price volatility, it was seasonal. On the demand side, demand was on-off oriented. Dumb loads, appliances, equipment, that sort of thing. From a demand-supply matching standpoint, if there was an imbalance on the grid, this generally happened during heat waves, emergency events during the summer. Utilities would call plant managers at large industrial facilities and pay them to turn their loads down for a few hours. That was supply and demand matching. So as short as 15 years ago, this was how the world worked. Now, as we know, things are different. We're at 40+% renewables on the grid in California and growing rapidly. A lot of that capacity is intermittent. We have a lot of daily price volatility, as described by Colton. From a demand standpoint, after years of basically flat load on the system, PG&E is predicting 70% load growth over the next 20 years. A lot of that new load is it's electric, right? And it's flexible. Think EVs, think heat pumps. The challenge here is that if all of that 70% load growth comes in a way that results in a 70% growth in our peak load, we have a huge problem. That means we have to expand our distribution system capacity by that amount. We have to build a lot of new stuff to accommodate all that new load. But if we can steer that load into off-peak hours, we essentially have the capacity we need on the grid today to handle that. We need some more power, but the distribution capacity is there. So there's huge economic value in getting all this new load that's coming onto the system to behave and go into hours that are affordable and plentiful on the grid. So how can we do that? Three main ways to date. One is time variant electric rates. Another is daily load modification incentive programs. And a third is event-based, think the 10 or 15 hottest days of the summer, event-based load reduction incentive programs. And I'll describe some examples here quickly. From a rate standpoint, again, one of the keys in all of these is connecting devices to these signals. So using automation to help influence how these loads happen. And we have new opportunities for that, as I described earlier. With EVs, EVs can be set to understand a time of use rate schedule. They can begin charging, many of you probably do this, at 11 p.m. in the evening when the rate's the lowest. It's a pretty simple example. We're experimenting now with day-ahead hourly prices. Good example that's been piloted is for irrigation pumping, which is a huge electricity use. Those pumping controllers understand that day-ahead hourly pricing signal and schedule the next day's pumping for the 2 or 3 cheapest hours because that load is flexible. A good example of a daily load modification program is where customers receive payments for automated discharge of their batteries during scheduled peak hours each day. So imagine a fleet of several thousand batteries in our service territory that are discharging between 5 and 7 p.m. in the evening, and the capacity savings that can represent. An event-based example that is becoming pretty common these days is for customers to enroll their smart thermostats in a program that will compensate them for allowing their thermostat to be dialed up 2 or 3 degrees on an event day in the summer. So not every day, but just on the hottest days. And if you think about tens of thousands of air conditioners, having to operate less intensively on those hot days, that's a tremendous value to the grid. So these are some examples of how connecting smart devices with market signals can make a big impact on energy and demand requirements on the grid. There's a lot of potential for this in our service territory, and there's also a lot of numbers on this slide, but it's an interesting one. What we're showing here are number of devices we estimate in our territory today in 2025, EVs, battery storage, and the like, and what that picture looks like in 2030. I'll draw your attention to the bottom line, though, which is in 2025, as of today, we estimate between 50 and 100 plus megawatts of demand flex capacity across these devices. Some of that is operating today, but a lot of it isn't. A lot of these devices are not, again, connected to signals that are allowing them to perform in the way that we've described. Looking out into the 2030 timeframe, that flexible capacity basically doubles given all of the growth in adoption that we're seeing in these technologies that are coming online. And to put 100 to 220 megawatts in perspective, that would be roughly between 10 and 20% of SVCE's peak load. So in a perfect world, if we could connect to all these devices and have them operate in an optimal way, we could knock down the peak in our service territory by that amount. Now that's a big dream. It's going to take a lot to do that, but that's the sort of potential that we're talking about. This is not lost on the California Energy Commission. They've established a goal statewide to more than double load shift capacity by 2030. They estimate it to be about 3,000 megawatts across the state, or 5 to 6% of peak today. And again, they're looking to double that. If we took a pro rata share of that for our service territory at that growth, it would be in the 70 to 80 megawatt range, which is interesting relative to the numbers I just showed you. So the state's goals, brought down to our service territory definitely seem doable, again, if we can get devices connected and operating against market signals. So with that as background, I'm going to turn it over to Joey now, who's going to talk about SVCE's goals and where we're headed with our demand flexibility efforts.
Thank you. So yeah, Colton helped describe the value proposition here, which is great. Sets the stage for what we need to do and how we might value demand flexibility. And Don provided the great context and history. So our goal is really providing a pathway for as many SVCE customers as possible to earn savings by flexing demand. Different customers will have different needs. We wanted to have a solution that's inclusive of many different end-use loads and ways of engaging with customers. So our near-term plans for 2025 and 2026 are to contract for a distributed energy resource system, a DERMS platform, that's really sort of the foundation for supporting new programs and new activities that might support demand flexibility. We want to contract with a handful of key providers for existing capacity that exists in our service area, and by connecting that to the DERMS, we'll have new capability in managing those loads per SVCE's needs. Additionally, we want to include pathways for existing SVCE programs to integrate with the DERMS platform. So newly electrified loads, we want to be able to communicate with those devices and provide new incentives to customers and ways for them to earn savings in addition to electrifying. And then finally, we have a couple of ideas for new dedicated programs to advance demand flexibility broadly. Those include a new battery storage program that this agreement will help jumpstart, a new commercial and industrial demand response program that's a little ways out still at this point, and a new smart thermostat program. Next slide, please. Oh, thank you. This one? Thanks. Okay, so what is a DERMS and why do we need one? A DERMS is not a program in itself. It's a software platform. So we're not going to get anything with the DERMS, but it is our ability to connect to devices and manage them. Good DERMS solutions can connect to many different device types, including batteries, commercial building management systems, heat pumps, thermostats, and EVs. And we plan to leverage the DERMS to interface with vendors through the work that they do, our own programs, and it's our tool for valuing that demand flexibility as well. It gives us insights into what flexible loads are doing. So how does it work? And this is a very simple example, but we'll walk through it here. So if a customer has a battery at their home, we stand up on our end a new incentive program to reward participation in a demand flexibility program. The battery gets connected to the DERMS, and the DERMS ingests data from the battery on how it's operating. We, on the back end of the program, provide instructions to the DERMS on how it's supposed to dispatch that battery. That can be based on many different variables, including the customer's rate, and when they may need that battery capacity, but we will provide the conditions for dispatch based on weather, day-ahead market price conditions, reliability issues, emergency events, whatever it may be, the DERMS will dispatch that battery. And then we understand what happens at the battery level based on the data collected at the DERMS. So we released a solicitation late in 2024 to identify partners, and I flagged partners because we knew this wouldn't just be one contract, many aspects to this solution and effort overall. But the RFP was grounded in two key parts. One was very DERMS focused, and we wanted that to also include existing capacity. We wanted to hear from vendors who are experienced in this area and have demonstrated solutions, and we really wanted to hit the ground running. Part two of the solicitation was grounded in an ask for how we might scale to 25 megawatts of new demand flex capacity by 2030, and we wanted that to be fairly broad in the types of flexible loads that it includes. It was a lucky timing, really. Peninsula Clean Energy was considering a similar solicitation right at the same time. So we joined forces in the RFP, and this bode well for responses. We received 17 proposals, and we are currently negotiating a contract with Lunar Energy for 4 distinct scopes. The first scope is the DERMS platform itself, so it's software as a service type contract. The second scope is the pathway for SVCE programs to be loaded to the DERMS, what we're calling on-ramps. The third is an enabling agreement for load modifying capacity from existing batteries within our service area. And the fourth is for the design and implementation of a new SVCE battery storage program. We have a second contract under development with a different provider, and we'll bring that back to the board when ready, but separate from Lunar scope. A little bit about Lunar. Great qualifications overall. They manage the largest third-party residential battery fleet in the world. Global company. They have experience in many different ways of dispatching distributed energy resources, key part of why we were interested in working with them. They really checked all the boxes in what we were looking for, but I think the thing that stands out to me most of all is how flexible working with Lunar may be moving forwards. This is still a relatively new topic, and we're responsive and aware of new and transitioning regulatory and legislative asks on a regular basis. So I think our solution here, you know, it needed to be capable of moving as and shifting as requirements change. Lunar also recently contracted with AVA and was also selected by PCE within the joint RFP. So I'll wrap up with our recommendation, which is for the board of directors to authorize the chief executive officer to negotiate and execute a 5-year main services agreement with Lunar for the DERMS platform and related services with a not to exceed amount of $971,238. That's all. Any questions?
Great. Any questions on this side? I don't see any questions. Do we have any questions online? Just then I'll go ahead. I have a question. PCE also engaged in a process. Is there terms and conditions? I realize they're separate contracts, and so this is just reinforcing to us that they're doing business with similar entities. But do you know if what they're looking for is similar to what we're asking for?
Yeah, we've gone through the contracting process with them in lockstep, and the MSAs are virtually identical. When we get into the separate scopes, there's some differentiation because some of what they're doing programmatically is a little different than what we're doing, but the structure is exactly the same. We've been on calls together from the start and as recently as today. We also got a discount from Lunar, a substantial discount, by working together like this. The fact that both CCAs committed to this at once was something that they considered in their pricing, and that worked out well for us.
And then based on either success or the opposite of that, do we expect any scope changes in the future, say a larger share or smaller?
So there will be additional programs coming to you. For instance, this battery program that we talked about. What we have included in this initial scope, along with 5 years of the DERMS platform and so forth, is design of the battery program. The actual implementation of it and the incentives and all of that will come to you separately in a distinct ask. A few of the other CCAs that we've been talking to are running very large battery programs with substantial incentives, really interesting. And that is definitely something we would bring back to the board because it's large scale.
Great. Let's turn it over to Director Makachuk.
Hi. I find this very exciting and very positive. I think that being able to leverage technology and data and to influence a large amount of demand and supply is truly going to make a difference. And to the extent that it makes a difference, I think if we can shift demand, it can also be better for pricing for our customers, which will make electricity more affordable, especially as an alternative. So those are just some sort of comments. You mentioned during the presentation, there were a couple of words that were mentioned that caught my ear. And I think that Monica knows, and Amrit, where you mentioned software as a service. And I want to make sure that we are doing the accounting correctly for that. That's kind of a comment. As well, I think it'll be interesting how people evolve and accept this, because at first there could be a significant amount of pushback when people are saying, oh, I'm gonna give control over my use of electricity to someone else. I know that in other jurisdictions, that's been an issue, but you can get through it with incentives. So I'm very supportive of this. And in terms of questions, there's going to be a separate plan. I believe, Dawn, you mentioned this on as these components roll out, but we have to get going with the platform initially. Is that correct?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Let's ask Vice Chair.
Sure. A few minor questions. So from a battery storage standpoint in residential, how does our set of customers compare to other CCAs? I was actually surprised with the 7,000 residential battery storage. I would have thought it would have been closer to probably half of that. So that to me is a positive thing. And I'm wondering also, there's a lot of different flavors of those systems. Are all of them capable for joining this program?
Yeah, I think we are probably doing better than most CCAs with respect to battery uptake in our service area. Nothing to back that up. That's just a feeling, to be blunt. Don, any thoughts on that one?
Well, I think with the new solar tariff too, because the economics of solar have really changed. It's difficult now to deploy solar without a battery. You really have to look at those two things together. And the CCAs that are starting to get into this battery incentivization thing are looking at the opportunity for solar and battery together really as a resource that collectively helps with that demand shaping that we talked about. So collecting solar, clean energy during the day, putting it in a battery, and then discharging during peak. Whereas historically, before people attached batteries routinely to their solar, every new residential solar system just made the duck curve problem worse. So there is a nice synergy now between solar and storage and an LSC like us that really wasn't necessarily there before.
May I add one thing too? I know that when the board, the board adopted the change to our net surplus calculation, which was done a few months ago, one of the things that we told the board at that time is that we were going to look at what the value proposition is for adding storage to a lot of our customers with solar, as we thought that would be not necessarily to deal with the reduction in the net surplus calculator. I apologize. That was when we adopted the net billing tariff. So after NEM 2.0, one of the things that we said we'd come back to the board with is what is the viability of adding battery to storage and the value proposition for our customers and for SVCE. And so this is part of that process too, is this will be a way for us to deploy batteries on storage as well.
Thank you. And then I'm assuming you have the data. It'd be good at some point if you could give an info to the board on that breakdown from city to city of what the installed batteries are. So of the 7,000, how it kind of breaks up, how it's broken down from city to city and unincorporated county, just from an educational standpoint and figuring out how well programs as well as conceivably the uptake within our communities are.
I think our data team would love that opportunity. I'm quite convinced they have that information and would be happy to share it.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Great. That might help encourage some of our friendly rivalries too. Director Lee.
Thank you. So I guess I'm one of those 7,000 households customers with my Tesla walls in the house. And right now, they do provide an event-based incentive, which I signed up for, which says basically, like you said, about 10 to 12 days a year, they would give you $2 per megawatt, which is very good, right? That we get that incentive, right? And it's all automated. They'll charge a battery and all that. How would that be effective with the DERMS being implemented? Would that coordinate together, or?
Yeah, great question. You're likely being compensated through a program called DSGS, which is a state incentive program that is, again, built around events like that.
Right.
We're really interested in having these batteries operate every day.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
And during events.
Right.
There is an opportunity now that we'll have a DERMS and that sort of thing for us to actually be a DSGS administrator. That's something we could look into for next year, and we could get some state money to help support that kind of an incentive, in addition to engaging those batteries in daily load shifting.
Right, exactly. And the automated load shifting is absolutely necessary. I mean, the manual load shifting is me at home around 7 p.m. screaming at my daughters, "Don't do laundry right now. This is the worst time." Right? And I'm not always home at 7 p.m. Like right now I'm here. But reality is, right, exactly. That's probably what's happening. But the automated is absolutely the key to make this work. And so I'm so glad this is happening. And given the cost, what we're talking about here is actually less than $1 million. So frankly speaking, it's fairly low cost for the amount of load shifting and benefits we get out of it. So I think this is really another one no-brainer that we need to implement. Thank you.
Great. I tell you what, let's go to public comments, then we'll come back to Director Walia for her comment. And coming to the lectern, Mr. Carney.
Good evening. Could you show the graph for April 14th again? I'd like to echo Director Mekachuk's insight that this is a real affordability win. This and the next item on the agenda together, I think, are tremendously exciting. So what you'll see on the graph is that essentially SVCE makes money in the middle of the day when it buys cheaply and sells at a moderate price, and you lose money at the morning peak and evening peak. And so it's certainly in SVCE's interest to flatten those peaks as much as possible, and so you'll be able to lower your rates to the extent that you're successful. But the other thing that caught my ear was the statement that even with a 70% load growth over the next 20 years, the existing transmission and distribution system potentially would not have to grow if the demand could flow evenly across the day. If 2/3 of the price that a customer pays for electricity is transmission and distribution, if that didn't grow and demand grew 70%, the implication is that with the low-cost renewable resources that we're putting on the grid and the other CCAs are putting on the grid, we would see a dramatic reduction in the customer's cost of electricity, which of course would stimulate electrification. So this is really, just so many good things all wrapped together that I absolutely support it and hope you will too, and look forward to adding smarter devices so that I don't have to do my laundry in the middle of the day just because I know that's the right time to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. And then Director Walia.
Thank you, Chair Tyson. John, Joey, and Colton, thank you so much for the presentation. And I specifically want to call out Colton, that slide, I didn't get the number, but it was a bar chart with a graph where you were actually showing us, walking us through the time of the day, how that capacity changes and what really we need to change for our residents, the customers. Something very interesting, I support this, I agree with pretty much all that has been said so far. Bruce, you missed one thing, that the other positive thing is the company is based out of Mountain View. That is a positive. I'm not from Mountain View, so I'll still say that. It's good to have companies from Silicon Valley. And interestingly, Pam, you may recall, was it spring of 2023, we actually attended a session in San Jose where the CEO was presenting, and I had a conversation with him at that time. So it's great to see innovation happening in the Valley on all aspects, specifically with clean energy sector. And that makes me feel even more positive that there is a lot more innovation out there, something we were talking of earlier in our new building. Perhaps this is a reminder that we do need to perhaps create a space or make it possible for technology innovation to happen. Because during my conversation with the CEO, Kunal Girotra, he also shared with me some of the challenges he had as a startup going through it. And I had nothing to do with staff choosing this year, just to be very clear. It is great to see something which is going to work for SVCE. Those are my comments, and I will be supporting it. Thank you.
To Director Willio's local comment, maybe they did this for effect, but a few of the presenters, when they came to present at our office, rode their bikes over. And believe me, we had companies from all over the world included in that 17. So.
Interesting. All right. Well, I believe that's it for comments. So Director Walia, would you be so good as to provide what's known as a motion?
Thank you so much. I'd be honored to make the motion as proposed by staff to adopt the resolution authorizing CEO Monica Padilla to execute a main services agreement with Lunar Energy for distributed energy resources management system DERMS and related customer demand flexibility services.
And especially as the representative from Mountain View, I would like to second.
Thank you. And that is Resolution 2025-11. Chair Tyson?
Yes.
Vice Chair Klein?
Aye.
Director Scozola?
Aye.
Fruin?
Aye.
Meadows?
Aye.
Risto?
Aye.
Showalter?
Aye.
Walia?
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
Mekachek?
Aye.
Thank you. That motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to item number 5. In case you haven't felt like we've talked about rates enough, we've got a little bit more for you here. So let's go ahead with this, and we have some new speakers. And just while they're coming up, this is our adopting a resolution regarding the e-elect, establishing an e-elect 2.0 rate pilot program.
Great, thank you, and good evening, board. So tonight we'll be talking about our recommendations for the electrification rate pilot programs. Specifically, we'll be recommending one action. I've broken it into 2 parts here. The first is that we'll be recommending that the board approve ending the current ELEC 1.0 rate pilot program and the associated rate schedule effective July 1st, 2025. And the second part is that we'll be recommending that the board adopt the ELEC 2.0 rate pilot program with a budget of $3.5 million. So first, just to set a little more context, I think we've gotten a sense of this already from that great staff presentation from Don and Joey and Colton. But really, we're exploring a lot of exciting kind of the future of energy and load flex potential through automating devices. How much can we do with price signals and automation to make things happen so that we don't have to think about them? But there's also the human element of it, and we can't really get around that part of it, right? People are still going to put in laundry, they're still going to plug in their car at a certain time. And so rates still play a crucial role for us. So this part we'll be talking about what can we do on the rate side to send behavior influencing price signals to customers. We'll specifically be talking about time of use rates. We're probably all familiar, but as a little refresher about time of use rates. So it's a structure that varies throughout the day. It varies the price of energy to the customer. So here on the blue line, you can see in a typical day, the time of use price structure. And this is an example of the EV rate, the ELEC rate, which we'll be talking a lot about tonight. It looks exactly the same. And they have 3 different components called time of use periods. So peak is the most expensive. And so historically, time of use rates have been kind of used a bit like a stick to talk a lot about peak. Peak is the most expensive. Don't use electricity during the evening hours, 4 to 9 p.m. That's the most expensive. And it's been effective. Like we've seen EV charging shift out of peak. We've seen some behavioral response to that. Off-peak is the cheapest period, the longest period. It lasts from midnight to 3 p.m. And then we have a part peak shoulder kind of in between peak and off-peak. This has been effective, like I said, in some ways, but it really hasn't kept up to date with California's current grid. As Colton talked about, the belly of the duck curve, right? We see the lowest cost, cleanest energy in the middle of the day, and the time of use rate structure doesn't reflect that. So we feel like we can do more to work with that and to send a better price signal to customers. So we'll be talking more about that today. But first, we're going to recap what we've learned from our ELEC 1.0 rate pilot program. So a little refresher about it. We are 2.5 years into the ELEC rate pilot program. It's something that the board approved that was really novel. We were the first CCA to do something like this, to try to use a rate design through a rate pilot program to see two main things. One was how much can we help lower costs of home electrification, specifically thinking about customers adopting heat pumps. And the second was, can we improve the rate structure so that we encourage them to change behavior? And so to do that, the board approved $9.5 million. We have 85% of that budget remaining. We have $8 million. But we used that budget to offer a deeper discount, specifically during the off-peak period. For comparison, all of our residential rates are currently a 4% generation discount relative to PG&E. We provided a 30% discount during the off-peak hours. And to encourage behavior change, we actually increased peak costs 10% above PG&E. We currently have 5,300 enrolled customers. And I'll talk a little bit about the enrollment, but first I'll just say briefly why the ELEC rate. So that was a brand new rate that PG&E introduced at the same time that we introduced the rate pilot. And it was billed as the electric home rate, specifically to help lower the cost of home electrification. To qualify for the rate, a customer has to prove to PG&E that they own either an EV, a heat pump of some kind, or a standalone battery. So we really liked that. In terms of how a customer was enrolled in our rate, we wanted to keep things simple, so we automatically enrolled customers on our end. So what we're seeing here is the process from a customer perspective and who controlled the part of it. Really, the journey was that a customer would go to PG&E through their account website, typically. They would enroll in the ELEC rate. They would prove to PG&E that they owned one of the qualifying devices. PG&E would put them on the ELEC rate, and then on our end, we would automatically put them in our rate pilot program. So we've learned a lot of things in 2.5 years, and mainly, looking at our two main goals, we wanted to reduce costs of home electrification. Again, thinking about heat pumps, customers have been saving money, on average $15 a month, so that feels like a win. But it doesn't feel like it's the right customers. In fact, 80% of customers are qualifying for the rate by owning an EV, so it feels like we didn't quite get the right customers that we were aiming for. In terms of incentivizing behavior shift, it feels like we made some improvement to the rate design kind of structure. It was really hard to correlate any behavior change with our rate design, mainly because these were mostly EV owners. They're charging at 1 in the morning, and our rate didn't do anything to encourage them to do anything differently. That was already the cheapest time. And lastly, the auto enrollment meant that most customers didn't even know that they were on our rate pilot program, and that really hurt our engagement in terms of interacting with customers about shifting load. Most of the time, they didn't really know what we were talking about, so we had to spend most of our kind of energy educating them about what the rate pilot program even was. So because of that, we're recommending that we phase out the first ELEC 1.0 rate pilot program because we think that we can do it better. So looking forward, adapting and incorporating these lessons learned, we're proposing in the 2.0 version that we make 4 big structural changes. The first is that we require heat pump space and water heaters to qualify, regardless of whether a customer owns an EV or any other technology. We're thinking about upcoming air district regulations. We think 2 heat pump households will become more and more common. Also, we think that we can adjust the rate design structure so that the time of use period is more in line with California's current grid. We will control rate enrollment this time so that the customer is aware of our rate pilot program and so that we have engagement and messaging with them from the start. And lastly, we'll use this to capture learnings so that we can design better rates in the future, looking at how do customers respond, who's shifting load and how are they shifting load, what's our impact to net revenue based on the amount of load that's shifting. Learning all of these things through a pilot type approach will allow us to design scalable rates for all customers that really help lower our costs and lower customers' costs in the future. Here's a look at what the proposed ELEC 2.0 rate structure looks like. And there's three main components. I'll start in the middle. So we're introducing a new time of use period called the super off-peak. This you could think of like the solar hours. It's 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. every day. And we're concentrating the discount most heavily during this time period because really we want to send a strong price signal to the customers to plug in the EV, start your laundry, run your dishwasher, do whatever you can when you can to concentrate load during this time to save the most money. Secondly, we will keep an overnight discount because we're really thinking about heat pump HVAC, specifically heating, and we want to keep these costs lower. And lastly, during peak, we're proposing not to increase costs above PG&E's prices to still offer a discount, just a smaller discount, because studies have consistently shown that low-income customers have flatter loads and less ability to shift their load. And we want to be able to enroll those customers and save them money too. We trust that with the super off-peak period, people will be incentivized to shift as much load as possible. And so if they're really unable to shift load out of peak, we still want to save them money. We don't want to penalize them through this pilot program. We really want this to be a carrot type approach. And now to talk you through some customer journeys, I'm going to pass it to Michaela.
Thanks, Peter. So this is what the proposed rate will look like on a 24-hour basis, but what does that mean for customer bills? So on the screen, we have exemplified 3 different customers that could enroll in either our default ELEC or our proposed ELEC 2.0 pilot rate plan. All 3 of these customers on your screen have heard about the fabulous technology called heat pumps and decided to install both heat pumps for water heating and space heating and cooling. On the far left of your screen, you'll meet Sue. Sue installs this heat pump technology and decides to enroll in the default ELEC rate. So this is the standard ELEC rate that PG&E offers with our added 4% generation discount. And once she makes the equipment installation and changes her rate schedule through PG&E, she doesn't think about her energy bill again. She doesn't change her behavior. Sue's still going to save $250 a year in energy costs compared to before these electrification efforts. Her neighbor down the street, Liz, on the other hand, installs the same equipment, but she hears about SVCE's ELEC 2.0 rate pilot program and decides to enroll, and she shifts some of her behavior. Maybe she schedules her smart thermostat, doesn't change a lot of behavior besides that, and sees higher savings of around $450 per year compared to prior to the electrification actions. And then her other neighbor, Joe, electrification spreads, hears about this awesome rate, installs heat pumps, and joins the ELEC 2.0 rate pilot program. And Joe's really excited about the opportunity of savings. And so she decides, hey, I've got this smart tech. I'm going to let both of my heat pumps, my HVAC and my water heater, optimize to my rate plan. And I'm also going to shift some of my day-to-day usage. So I'm going to delay my dishwasher. I'm going to run my laundry midday when I am home and have that option. And so Joe sees really high savings of $650 a year. These are just examples based on some analysis, but these are the key takeaway for this slide is that customers, whether they are on the default ELEC rate and installing heat pumps and not shifting load day to day, or on the ELEC 2.0 rate that offers higher savings, there is savings for everyone that is adopting these technologies with these rates. So hypothetical customers are great, but we have real customers that we've had the opportunity to talk to. 2 experiences that really allowed us to have good conversations with customers to inform this next version of the ELEC rate. The first opportunity was a power user dinner hosted at the end of 2023 when we had only 900 customers on the rate. We had direct conversations over dinner with customers about their experience on the rate and some of the barriers they faced in shifting load. Another opportunity was a rate design survey that we just recently concluded, where we had over 800 customers across all of our residential rate classes respond. And one key learning from both the power user dinner and the rate design survey for our ELEC customers was that these customers don't know how much they're saving on the rate, and they don't understand how much they're going to save by shifting specific usage. So is shifting my laundry or dishwasher or EV charging better? And these are customers that opened an email from their utility. They came to dinner with their utility. They are trying to reverse engineer their bills, and they're still struggling to understand the benefits, the carrot of this rate. And so a big lesson, a big takeaway from the first version, the ELEC 1 pilot, was that we want to spend a lot of intentional planning on communicating to customers about their performance so that they can realize even more savings and continue to share education with them about how they can continue those benefits. All right, so what will enrollment look like for customers? We have two paths shown on this slide because we are talking about two different rate options. The first is the default ELEC rate, very similar to the journey that Peter talked through earlier this evening. It'll be managed by PG&E, so customers enroll through ELEC through their PG&E account, prove that they own one of these three technologies and are enrolled through PG&E. On the back end, we will automatically enroll them in our default ELEC rate, which is parallel to PG&E's with that 4% generation discount. Very similar to how we manage all of our other residential rates. The automatic enrollment is on the back end, just adding that 4% generation discount. The lower line highlights the ELEC 2.0 rate pilot program enrollment, and you'll see that SVCE owns a lot more of this process. So customers will go through that first line, that first process of enrolling in ELEC through PG&E, and then they'll come to SVCE's website and apply for our ELEC 2.0 rate pilot program, where they'll prove that they own both a heat pump water heater and a heat pump HVAC, and then we will approve them to be in the ELEC 2.0 rate pilot program. And what's great about this is if customers join this 2.0 version and decide that they don't like it, we control the enrollment, and so we're able to opt customers back to the default rate at any time. All right, so budget and timeline are next, the last few slides of the presentation. We are proposing $3.5 million of the previously approved funding to fund this ELEC 2.0 rate pilot program. This will see us through the next 5 years, and you'll see that $2.5 million of that will go directly to customer bill savings. And then the remaining $1 million will be used for administration, implementation, and communications for maintaining this ELEC 2.0 rate pilot program. That will get us, we're projecting through the next 5 years, or 5,000 customers enrolled. And with this approval, the remaining ELEC budget, $4.5 million, will go back into the unallocated decarbonization program budget, meaning that if another program pops up that needs this funding, then staff will come back requesting this funding be used for another program. All right, and finally, our timeline. We are here in May seeking your approval to close ELEC 1.0 and transition those customers to our default ELEC and adopt ELEC 2.0. If we receive board approval, the sunset of ELEC 1.0 transition to default ELEC will happen in June and July. And then we will spend the second half of this year really working on preparing to launch ELEC 2.0, again, developing the communications, figuring out the best ways to share performance with customers, and setting up the billing systems and management systems in place to execute this rate successfully, this pilot program successfully, with a target launch of January 2026. And with that, I will read the recommended action. We're asking the board to adopt Resolution 2025-12, approving ending the current ELEC 1.0 rate pilot program and associated rate schedule effective July 1st, 2025, and establish the ELEC 2.0 rate pilot program with a budget of $3.5 million.
Thank you, Michaela. Do we have any questions from the, we do. Director Risto.
Thank you. This all sounds really interesting, and I'm not going to talk a lot. I have two quick questions. One was you commented that, when somebody's enrolled in an ELEC 2.0, if they decide they don't like it, they can switch back. What would a customer not like about it? I'm just curious. I mean, is it a privacy issue? Is it gee, I want my air conditioner maxed out during an event?
It's hard for me to imagine anything they wouldn't like about it, but I guess just to point out the benefit of us controlling the enrollment process, PG&E has a limit. A customer can only change a rate once within 12 months, but this wouldn't impact that. So kind of to say if the customer wanted to opt out, maybe they wanted to switch to a totally different rate for some reason, we would be able to switch them out of the pilot without kind of impacting the PG&E side.
Okay, thank you. So that kind of opens up, they're not locked in. It's like, you know what, you can try it. If you don't like it, you can go out. Then they won't have this anxiety of I'm making a binary decision and I can't move back. My other question is when you talked about if this is adopted, the June, July timeframe, that customers will be taken off ELEC 1.0 and moved into the default ELEC. Will they be notified that, wait, in a few months, you're going to have this other opportunity, so they understand what's happening?
Yes, we will be notifying customers before we change them to the default rate, and then once we do change them to the default rate, and we'll be including a heads up that there is another version of this rate pilot program coming up. I will flag, as Peter mentioned, a lot of the customers enrolled in our ELEC 1.0 are enrolled with an EV, and so a handful of these customers, the majority of these customers, based on our data, won't be eligible for the ELEC 2.0, requiring both heat pumps. But we will keep that list because as heat pumps spread throughout the neighborhoods, customers will be able to enroll.
Okay, great. So they will understand what improvements they can make and what upcoming changes they can make so that they can participate in ELEC 2.0.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Director Waldia and then Director Lee.
A couple questions. So Maria asked one question that I asked at the exec committee meeting, and then she asked my first question today, which was what would somebody not like? And the other was the messaging to the current ELEC 1.0. So my train of thought is going along those lines. So my next question is, what is the difference in the basic ELEC PG&E rate and the ELEC 2.0? You may have mentioned it, I may have missed that. What's the differential there? Besides the use that here they have to have a heat pump water heater as well as a space heater. I'm talking dollars and cents.
Yeah, in terms of I can talk in terms of generation, like percent discount, if that's helpful.
Yeah.
We'll, like I said, concentrate the biggest discount during the super off-peak. That will be a 60% discount relative to the PG&E generation rate.
Yeah, because that question came to my mind as I was looking at the slide toward the end where you're describing the process. First, they go through the PG&E ELEC rate, then they get the 4% discounts, and then they come to us if they are eligible. Mm-hmm. They qualify for ELEC 2.0. And so that's where I was thinking, what is the extra benefits? So it's essentially in that 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. window that you talked of earlier, the super off-peak.
Yeah, as you can see, and thanks, Andrea, for the slide, it's cheaper all of the time. It's a 60% discount during the super off-peak.
You might want to show the first appendix slide.
Yes, great, thank you. Great, thanks. Now I don't just have to say all the numbers and you don't have to remember them all, but yeah, here we can see the comparison between the default ELEC rate, which again is, here it's reflecting that default rate is 4% cheaper than PG&E during all time periods. And then all the way on the right is the ELEC 2.0 rate pilot program. So you can see that the concentrated discount, the 60% during the super off-peak period, a 30% during the off-peak, and then a 10% during the peak and the part peak shoulders. And I'll go one slide forward just to put this in terms of generation rate actual dollars, this is what that translates to.
I did see that slide earlier and had forgotten the number, so thank you for bringing that up. What I also liked in the slide you showed earlier, slide 11, which shows the off-peak, super off-peak, the one you had earlier here, Andrea. What I like is it's demonstrating to everyone, even if they don't qualify for E-Elect 2.0 right now. Let's talk just the current EV owners who are on E-Elect 1.0. Why not communicate to them that in any case, whatever their usage is during that time, if they can shift their load toward the super off-peak time of 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., they are helping themselves as well as helping with the grid. We are anyway communicating with them. And then separately, that is something we may want to bring out forward on our website or other messaging with the residents. Because I know personally I've had some challenges for multiple reasons of not being able to use some of these. And I'm not even talking cost savings, just as such I would like to do it, but I've run into issues. So the overarching goal for us is reducing emissions and shifting load. And there are so many buckets of our customers who we can basically educate. And that was something going back to our 4 o'clock session, that there are various ways. I was talking with Mayor Klein at that time. We all need reminders of what, and I'm not talking specifically Elect 2.0 right now, but we all need reminders of what appliances at home consume how much electricity, so that if we are aware of that, let's choose the top 3 that we can try to shift our load into the 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Time period. That's why I was referring to the other question. That's the whole train of thought. How can we communicate to our customers the best? Fabulous work by the team. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Director Lee, did you have something?
Yeah, so the requirement for the new system is you need to have both the electric heat pump and also the electric water heater. When you say electric heat pump, does it mean, could it be just one unit for the house, or it has to be entire house has been using a heat pump for effect?
When you're thinking about that heat pump space heater, for example.
Right.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think something that we'll still be ironing out in probably the coming months. But I think that's a great point that
It just needs to be
we'll take into
clarified, I think, for the
consideration.
consumers to know. Yeah, that's all. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Director Scozola?
Yeah, just had a couple comments. Thank you for the presentation. To me, it's amazing. You clearly learned from 1.0, and this is a refined version. Any of the weaknesses, I really like what I'm seeing here. I'm especially really impressed with it incentivizing the better energy use habits, but also the forcing, for lack of a better word, the interaction with our customers. I think that's really important that you guys saw that, hey, we're not really interacting with these guys, and one of our huge things is education, so let's start interacting with our customers. So I think this 2.0 really solves that. And then last, I'm always happy to see affordability, thinking about our lower income families, and that was also well thought out in here, so I really appreciate that. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. You know, just to build on that, I had some of the same reactions. We just spent part of the afternoon talking about how to use our new space and what kind of education and approaches. So I think it's just very instructive to see the discussion about 1.0 and what people didn't realize. And I think I'm already sitting there thinking in this new facility, we'd have a little game where you dial, I change this behavior, and now it's like a Tetris of electricity, something like this. So you can have that idea for free. And so I thought a really good presentation. I think let's take any public comment. Mr. Kearney.
ELEC 1.0 customer. When I qualified, I had an EV and a heat pump water heater. I entered the VIN of the EV and the serial number of the heat pump water heater. And I'm sad to think that there will be a 6-month period while I will be forced to be on the PG&E ELEC rate. So I would seriously wonder why ELEC 1.0 is going away before ELEC 2.0 is ready to receive the many customers who are already qualified. That seems like a real shot in the foot. So here's what I would recommend. That instead of ending the ELEC 1.0 rate 6 weeks from now, that you end it 7.5 months from now when you're ready to introduce 2.0, that you inform all the customers that here are the new requirements. You may not qualify, but you have 7.5 months to get the appliance that you need in order to qualify for 2.0. There's a stale data challenge for those who got on 1.0 at the earliest opportunity. That was almost 2 years ago, maybe even more than 2 years ago. So you don't know, PG&E doesn't know what appliances, what vehicles that family has now. And so I really think that you could have a lot of unhappy 1.0 customers if you implement the dates that were in one of the last slides that were shown. And I think perhaps tonight is not the right time to fix that, but I do think it needs to be fixed.
Great, thank you, Bruce. We won't expect you to reply, but understand the issue there and what that involves. With that, I don't have any other public comment. I don't see any, and I see Director Mekachuk. Go ahead, please.
Thank you.
You're supposed to warn me.
I was very excited when ELEC first came out, and I've got solar, I've got a battery, I've got heat pump water heater, and in the past 6 months, I put in a split heat pump. So I think the problem that you've got with ELEC 1.0 is that customers like me that had solar plus storage couldn't get onto the ELEC plan. And we still can't get on the ELEC plan until PG&E changes their billing system. And I think that Director Lee probably knows this as well, because I believe he said he's got a battery, and if he's got solar, then you can't get on this even no matter how much you want to get on it. And I believe that this runs the opposite of what we heard about in the prior presentation, where we want to reduce the load between 4 and 9 p.m., 4 and 8 p.m., that peak, and we want to increase the load in the middle of the day when there's all the solar that's available. So this rate doesn't work for that. But then again, if you look at the people that are eligible for this rate, it doesn't include the people that have solar and batteries, and they can go and they can move their load around. So while I like this, I don't think it does what we want it to do. And I'm having a hard time with that. I'm going to have a hard time supporting this because I don't think it does what we want it to do. And it's going to take a lot of effort to get people to shift their load if they can't shift their load. But I suppose if you must have a heat pump water heater or a heat pump space heater, then it's going to work. So I'm torn on this one, but I sure wish I could participate in the 1.0 or even the 2.0. So those aren't questions, those are comments.
Thank you, Director. All right. We do note that you're not spending all the money you put into 1.0 and you still have money left for other programs. So let's just say as we learn and adapt and come up with new approaches that we have funds that we can apply to other programs. With that, I'm going to say I think we have all the comments. Oh, yes.
Thank you for jogging my memory. I asked this question of the CEO yesterday. So the money that is coming back, which has not been used, when it gets reallocated to other programs, even if they're existing programs, does that come back to the board for approval?
Yes, it will be going into an unallocated program fund, so it will have to come back to the board to be reallocated wherever it goes.
Wonderful. Just wanted it on the record. Thank you so much.
Great. I do believe I'm ready for a motion.
Happy to make the motion to adopt resolution to end SVCE's E-Elect 1.0 electrification discount rate pilot program and establish the E-Elect 2.0 rate pilot program with dedicated funding.
A second.
Thank you. And this is Resolution 2025-12. Chair Tyson?
Yes.
Vice Chair Klein?
Aye.
Director Scozola?
Aye.
Fruin?
Aye.
Meadows?
Aye.
Risto?
Aye.
Showalter?
Aye.
Walia?
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
Megachek?
Abstain.
Thank you. That motion carries.
Great, thank you. We're coming up to the last item here, item number 6, which is approve formation of an ad hoc committee to propose amendments to the operating rules and agreements. And did we have slides for that? Oh my, okay, well, I'm going to have to wing it then. So we had slides for the executive committee where this first came up, and let's see if I can remember my main points. The main points were that Silicon Valley Clean Energy is an increasingly complex and large organization, and it's, I think, suitable for us to periodically look at our governance as other neighboring CCAs have done, to make sure that we've got appropriate type of way of managing ourselves that fits the business and the nature of who's involved with this. I give as one example to this the fact that when we came up with deciding on our executive committee, there was no such rule in place that said that the chair and the vice chair should be on the executive committee, and we all agreed immediately, why isn't that so? So I just hold that out as an example. And so what I'm proposing is that this is an appropriate time. We have growth in our business. We have a relatively new CEO. We have ongoing turnover of our board members, and that it's an appropriate time to look at our governance. But I do want to give a context to this and say, I think our governance is good. I think we're an effective board. I think we make very good decisions in an effective manner, and I think we work very well with the staff, and I want that to continue. And so what I'm proposing is that we form an ad hoc subcommittee of the board members to just look at our governance, that we look at what's going on at other CCAs, we consider what sorts of issues might help us, and that we then develop a list of proposals that we then bring to the executive committee to sort out and then bring to the full board for review. At this point, I can't say how major might they be. I don't expect that it's tremendously major. The whole motivation here is let's make sure that we're set up for the future in a long-term durable way. And so I'm bringing forward this proposal, and then I'm also proposing going ahead to say, I'm going to say let's make this a 3-person ad hoc subcommittee, and for that we choose people that are on the board that represent experience with governance of large operations. And so for that, I'm proposing that Vice Chair Klein, representing the city of Sunnyvale, be a member of that, and that member Showalter, representing the city of Mountain View, and that also I, as chair, representing the town of Los Altos Hills. And in my defense, I would say you would not call that a large organization, but I will say that I served 4 years on the Cupertino School District, which had a employment of 800 people and 17,000 students. I was the chair or the president of that, and also I served as a former general manager of Bay Area operations for Johnson & Johnson some years ago. So I have some experience with that. So the proposal in front of you, which has been endorsed by the executive committee, which you see in the documents in front of you, is that we form such an ad hoc subcommittee, and I don't recall the exact terms, but within a matter of few months we report back to the executive committee and the board with our recommendations. And with that, I will close and stop for questions. I don't see any questions. Do we have any comments from the public? I do not see any. Do we have?
Actually, I'm sorry, Chair, we do have, oh, never mind, we do not.
No.
No hands raised.
Okay, all right. And then any other comments? Any other comments or a motion?
So, and I just want to thank the chair. You know, as we talked about at the executive committee, it is really important for us to look at kind of how governance, good governance for this board, and it's been quite a few years since we've done that. But looking at what other CCAs are doing in their bylaws, and just looking at exactly the case in point that you had of you know, the chair and vice chair should be on the executive committee because they often get a preview of what's happening here and conceivably raising, you know, issues before it gets to the full board. And I think, you know, those looking at some of this holistically, I thank you for adding me to that ad hoc committee. And then just from a recommendation standpoint, I'm ready for a motion whenever you have it. But thank you for taking the lead and also, you know, kind of forcing this issue because it hasn't been looked at, you know, for a while, you know, and having your experience with this organization, I think that's important. And I thank you for including me in that ad hoc committee. Thank you.
Any other comments? Director Showalter.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think that looking at governance from time to time is just a healthy thing to do. And in the political climate that we're currently in, we want to be examples of good governance. So I think this is, you know, a very small example, but worth doing. So thank you very much for bringing it up, and I look forward to thinking about it and working on it.
We have I acknowledged Director Fruin, so I'm going to go to him and then Director Mekachuk.
Thank you. I just wanted to underscore, you know, we seem to have a very collegial bunch here. It feels like that has, generally speaking, been the tenor of things over a long span of time. That said, boards can sometimes have folks on them who have their own opinions and want to see those opinions prosecuted as much as possible, and can take it perhaps with too great a deal of passion. So a lot of rules that exist for cities, for boards, etc., really presuppose a degree of good faith on the part of every member. And I would just encourage you to examine what the rules perhaps need to look like in cases where that's not the case.
Good point, duly noted. Director Mekachuk?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the recommendation as put forth for the ad hoc committee with the 3 members, as noted.
Okay.
And I'll second that. I appreciate Director Makachuk's motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair Tyson?
Yes.
Vice Chair Klein?
Aye.
Director Scozola?
Aye.
Fruin?
Aye.
Meadows?
Aye.
Risto?
Aye.
Showalter?
Aye.
Walia?
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
Mekachuk?
Aye.
Thank you. That motion carries unanimously.
Great, thank you. I look forward to reporting back and taking more input from you as a part of that process. With that, I'm ready to move on to board member announcements and
Chair
directions.
Tyson,
Yes.
may I make a comment on
Oh.
that item? I'm sorry.
Yes.
I had my hand up.
Please
but I'm
go
not
ahead.
before. I just wanted to.
Your screen is too high. I can
I
barely
know, I
see
can't
you.
see you guys over there. I just wanted to say that as staff, we support that effort as well. I know this is an ad hoc committee of the board, but we too will be looking at the operating rules and regulations. And if we see opportunities for things that we think need to be changed, we will put those forth to this ad hoc committee in some fashion, but want you to know that we are also doing our effort to look at these, and we will work with you in any manner, so.
For sure. Our last item, board member announcements and direction on future items. Do we have any contributions? Director Lee.
Yeah, maybe for future discussion issue, Monica, I would like to see what type of rebate program SVCE has offered or is not yet regarding the conversion to the electric leaf blowers. I know those are rebates as provided in many other organizations or jurisdictions, and we have a very rigorous discussion of that at the county level. And I just wanted to double check to see if SVC does have that, and if we don't, there's something whether we should look into, especially we do have some funding to make that happen, to make the transition less costly for those gardeners, for example.
Okay, we can have staff respond to that because we do have a program.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to plug our eHub. So
Yay.
our eHub appliance marketplace, we have done a springtime, when you get those garden commercials, a discount or an instant rebate on electric yard care items, and it's been a popular promotion. I don't have the stats in front of me on how many people have taken advantage of it, but we have done that every year for the past several years, and since we just revamped eHub, I don't think we have that on the schedule for this spring, but we do plan to have that be a popular promotion that we bring back to customers. And we're looking at doing a joint promotion with one of our member agencies in the past, but then CARB through the state had done a commercial rebate that was really popular, and I think that ran out of funds. So this is something that we have the ability to do. We don't, so I'd have to get back to you on the timing of it, but it is something that we are capable of doing, and it has been popular in the past.
Yeah, so since the CARB commercial program is so popular, they ran out of funds, right? Good news, bad news, ran out of funds. So if we could actually help on that regard, at least locally, I think that would be great to continue this commercial rebate program. Thank you. That's all I have. Thank you.
I don't see any other hands raised. So with that, I will say thank you, everybody, and we adjourn at 8:57. I'll take it.
Very good.